Hello there, and in this video I want to talk about the great fusion guitarist Aldi MEOLA. Aldi MEOLA was born in 1954 and he actually came to fame in Chick Corea's Return to Forever. The first sort of fusion rock album by the Return to Forever, which is Hymn to Seventh Galaxy, had another incredible guitarist on there called Bill Connors. And Bill Connors didn't want to tour, and he wanted to go off and do other things. And so Chick Corea then started scouring the music colleges and around to try and find a guitarist, you know, that was something special. And God, did he find it with Aldi MEOLA. And Aldi MEOLA basically took that sort of John McLaughlin fast-picking approach in his own unique way and just pushed it to a limit, you know. And it's very influential in a lot of the metal guitarists that came in the 1980s, people like Yngwie Malmsteen, because I think he really set the bar in terms of fast guitar playing. But he's much more interesting than that because his influences are from like jazz, but the Beatles, you know, songs, but he's also got a very strong Spanish influence there, strong Latin influence in there as well. And he amalgamates that together in the late 70s into a series of jazz fusion albums, which are classic jazz fusion albums. And I really felt I needed to talk about those albums from the late 70s. So I didn't want to deal with all his albums. I just want to do a video about the jazz fusion albums, the 70s jazz fusion albums. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. I first came across Aldi MEOLA on the album Romantic Warrior by Return to Forever. I was floored by that guitaring. I can remember taking that album round to my friend's house and played it, and he didn't believe it was guitar playing because he didn't believe it was possible to play the guitar not only at that speed but with that intricacy and attack that is Aldi MEOLA's unique thing on guitar. So I went down to my local record shop and they had an Aldi MEOLA album. It was this album, Soaring Through a Dream, and I bought it. And did I get that on this album? No. What I got on this album was him trying to sound a bit like Pat Metheny. That's what it seemed like to me. He got guitar synth. He was sort of in this, you know, easy on the ears Latin jazz area. And it was I like this album because I like Pat Metheny, but it really sounded like he was trying to do an off ramp. You know, I've just done a video on Pat Metheny, so you can go and check that out. And I started to search around his albums. You know, he brought out some acoustic albums that are really incredible. Later on, he brought an album out of Astor Piazzolla compositions. These are heavy albums. They were great albums. But I couldn't find the sound, right? Eventually, I got his first solo album, which is called Land of the Midnight Sun. And finally, I found what I was looking for. So this is one of the things with Aldi MEOLA. I really love the albums he's done since the 70s, and he's explored all sorts of different areas, right? Let's grab these CDs. He's explored all sorts of different areas, but for me, if you're a jazz fusion fan, you really need to get your head around these 70s albums. He's gone back to the fusion sound later on, but never as successful as he did on these early albums. So, this is the first one. It was recorded in 1975, I think it came out in 1976. Incredible lineup on here with a number of musicians that he's going to use on his fusion albums from now on. So it's got Minga Lewis on percussion, that he really collaborates with him a lot. Anthony Jackson on electric bass. Anthony Jackson is one of the few bass players at that time that is able to keep up with Aldi MEOLA. Incredible virtuoso bass player, real pioneer of six-string bass. And the great Steve Gadd on drums. We've also got Lenny White on here on drums. We got Barry Miles, really incredible jazz and fusion pianist that went on to do soundtracks and stuff like that. He doesn't crop up on that many albums, but he's a really great player. We've also got Stanley Clarke on here, and on side 2, there's a track, very proggy track called Sweet Golden Dawn. It's about 15 minutes long, and it features Jaco Pastorius on bass guitar, and it's one of Jaco's great moments. So this album, if I was going to go for my favourite jazz fusion album by Aldi MEOLA, it could well be this album. I absolutely do love this album. It doesn't get mentioned as much as the follow-up to this, Elegant Gypsy, which I also love. But for me, this may even be a little bit better than Elegant Gypsy. I think in terms of jazz fusion, he really achieves something on this album. He really sets his sound up, which is this sort of it's come from Return to Forever, but there's a lot stronger Spanish and Latin influence with Al Di Meola, but it's also got like sort of a heavy rock, heavy metal influence in there as well. These albums very influential on the metalers, and I think he nails the sound on here. There's a couple of vocal tracks, but on the whole, it's pretty much heavy fusion. The Wizard's fantastic, that opens up the album. Land of the Midnight Sun, fantastic. I said Sweet Golden Dawn, and at the end he does a thing called Short Tales of the Black Forest with Chick Corea on acoustic piano and him on 6-string acoustic guitar and gong, and it's absolutely fantastic. And those moments, especially side 2, did he ever surpass that? This is a fantastic album, right? So yes, he follows that up with Elegant Gypsy, which contains probably his most famous tune, Race with the Devil on the Spanish Highway, which is sort of proto-prog metal in 1976. It really is. I think that's 76, 1977, you know. The lineup is Steve Gadigan, Anthony Jackson, Mingo Lewis, Lenny White, Barry Myers, but it's also got Jan Hammer on here. And of course, if Jan Hammer's on an album, I love it. That's the way it is. And it's also got the great Paco de Lucia. He sort of discovered Paco de Lucia, and he does a track on here which is a sort of you know, a duet with him, which really sets up for the guitar trio, which is him, Paco de Lucia and John McLaughlin. That may need a separate video to, I didn't want to deal with that on this video, but again, those albums, especially Friday Night San Francisco and the other album, Passion, Grace and Fire, they're just seminal albums, but perhaps beyond the remit of what I wanted to talk about here, which is Al Di Meola playing fusion. So for me, this is a fantastic album. Right, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but this is a fantastic album, equal to Land of the Midnight Sun. It really has nailed his sound. His guitar playing is off the scale. He's at the peak of his guitar playing. That sort of compositional approach that Al Di Meola's developed, he starts to push out even further out, and I feel that compositionally on Casino, which is the follow-up, which I assume is from 1978, yeah, on Casino, this one, he really pushes it further out and gets more into that sort of heavy metal, Spanish, flamenco, Latin, jazz with incredibly fast guitar playing style. He really pushes it out here. When I was younger and I first got these albums, I was a little bit disappointed with his guitar playing on this. I felt the compositions were taking over a little bit. You know, it's worth me having another list to see if that's the case, but I did feel like the compositions were taking over from the solos. You know, on Elegant Gypsy, and especially the first album, he really lets loose. There's some long guitar solos, but it's, again, this is a fantastic album. Not quite in the same league as the first two, but just a tiny bit lower, but it's like essential if you're a fusion fan. Egyptian Danza, Chase of the Voodoo, Dark Eyed Tango, he does Send Your Mouse, which is a career composition, and Fantasia Suite for 2 guitars, which I think is another duet with Paco de Lucia, and then Casino at the end. I've lost the liner notes for this. This has got so wrecked over the years. Like I said, I've played Al Di Meola to death. He's really settled in with these albums, don't you can see? He settled into these sort of, which I thought were really quite terrible covers. So there he is on the front. That's not too bad. He's got this sort of flamenco woman in the background and he's ignoring her. There, on the back, we have a really quite bad set piece with Al with that girl, and they've got a bottle of wine and then sort of a white table that they've got from some sort of a, don't know where they got that from. And someone's brought in a potted plant and stuck it in the background. I always had difficulty with these albums. This one, it's sort of even worse. So, you know, there is this sort of Valdunik and wicker chair, the potted plants back in the background, and then they wheeled in. He's got his guitar there because he's obviously playing the guitar and then doing a bit of gambling down the casino. You can see you've got this like spinny wheel here, and there's the roulette table there. There he is having a bit of a gamble and playing fast guitar. You know, absolutely ridiculous. You know, and then there's the scene of the crime. He's gone now. Obviously lost all his money. Had to leave the guitar. So yeah, I always found these Al Di Meola there with the cowboy boot, the white jacket and the black shirt. Yeah, I always found that quite difficult, and they could well put you off, but don't let them, because the music's incredible. Those first 3 albums are amazing. He then follows it up with a double album called Splendido Hotel. Here it is. And again, they've spent a little bit more money on this. Of course, we have the obligatory potted plant. This is like the real feature of these 3 albums. They're on all of them, you know. And we have Al there. And of course, we have the cowboy boot there. Right, there he is. He's turned up at Splendido Hotel with his girl. And then the girl's gone off with his guitar. God knows what's going on in that room at night time. I'm joking a little bit. Because this album is a bit preposterous. Right, this one's not quite on the same level. He's really chasing, as they did in the late 70s, early 80s, they're really chasing, you know, the album sales. So there's a follow-up to Race with the Devil on the Spanish Highway called Alien Chase on an Arabian Desert. That's fantastic. And then we do fall into a little bit of, there's a track called The Story in Her Eyes, which is a bit of a, I mean, it's got Chick Corea on it, but it's just a little bit easy listening. And then they have on beginning side 2, they have a track called Roller Jubilee, which is like a disco funky track. This is where Al just loses it, starts to lose a bit. Then you get to Tango, Al Di Meola, Chick Corea, that's fantastic. And then Aldi's Dream Theme, that's good. You know, that's a nice tune, it's great. It doesn't fall into the sort of, you know, we want to hit area. Beginner side 3, Dinner Music for the Gods, full on fusion, absolutely fantastic. Love that track. It says, the gods definitely don't listen to Muzak while they eat. A majestic anthem for these intense supreme spirits. They don't. The gods don't listen to Muzak. So why are you making it on here? Then you get Splendido Sundance, which is him overdubbing himself. That's great. And then you get him singing a sort of love ballad called I Can Tell. I could have done without that. And you get the lyrics as well. Side 4, he does a version of Spanish Eyes by Bert Kaempfert. All right, it's got a Les Paul on guitar as well. I ain't got a problem with him doing that, but Spanish Eyes is one of the most cheesiest tunes ever, and he does it as cheesy as possibly could. And then it ends with a track called Ishfahan, which I really like. It's acoustic guitar, Al Di Meola, Chick Corea's acoustic piano. It's got Kara Shiva, Mavish Noksha's second incarnation, Dave Campbell on violin. And a choir. That's a great track. And then you got Bianca's Midnight Lullaby, which is another acoustic. So yeah, if he'd have taken off all those tracks I didn't like, I would probably be saying that this is up there with the other albums. But I must admit, even the fusion things he does on here are still a little bit tamer than what you get on Elegant Gypsy and Land of the Midnight Sun. But it's worth getting. You know, there's some fantastic playing here. He's got more money. The production's fantastic. He's got like on drums throughout. He's got Robbie Gonzalez. He's got Steve Gadd on a couple of tracks. I think one I can see, but Robbie Gonzalez is a great drummer, but he's not Lenny White or Steve Gadd. So that was a bit of a letdown for me. He's on a lot of the sort of more fusion tracks. So Splendido Hotel. As the 80s begun, he then brought out this Tour Divorce Live. I have always seen this album as being the last hurrah for 70s jazz fusion. Right, he comes out live with a band that has got him on guitar, obviously, Jan Hammer on keyboards, Steve Gadd on drums, Anthony Jackson bass, Mingo Lewis percussion. And then I think there's Victor Gonzi overdubs and keyboards on it. But, you know, this is a formidable live band playing full-on jazz fusion in, I think, 1982. It's like the last hurrah. It's the last time. We're not going to see this really ever again, where a musician of this stature is able to go out playing that stuff to sort of, you know, arena-sized venues to thousands of people, playing full-on instrumental jazz fusion. And I think they know that. I think Al Di Meola makes the right decision in the 80s to then change his tack and start to explore different areas. And he does some really interesting things. But this album is absolutely fantastic. Elegant Gypsy Suite. I love it. I love the version on Elegant Gypsy. But the one on here is even better because it's live and it's just full on. We get then a Nana Advantage. Their tracks off... He made some albums around this time with Jan Hammer. I think there's an album called Scenario. And like I said, they're good albums, but you can tell the climate's changed, and they're even further on from Splendido Hotel for me. They're not quite as hard hitting. Of course, Jan Hammer's on there, and I always like an album with Jan Hammer on. But I think the fact, even on here, those tracks which are a little bit easy on the ear, hearing them playing live, they got a little bit more grit. Then you get a Gypsum Danza from Casino. That's absolutely fantastic, and then an incredible version of Race to the Devil on Spanish Highway. And then Cruising, which is one of the, I think it's off Scenario, or I can't remember what the other album was. But for me, this is an essential purchase. So those 5 albums, I would say, if you want to get into jazz fusion by Alderman, they're the ones to check out. After that, like I said, he did the Soaring Through a Dream album, which I got, which is completely different altogether. He did an album called Cielo de Terror, which is like an acoustic guitar album. He did fantastic album of Astor Piazzolla compositions. He's done albums of like acoustic guitar versions of Beatles tunes, and he's done. There's an album called Kiss My Axe, which he sort of returns to sort of the heavy jazz fusion, but it's not the same as this period. You know, it's so hard to recreate that. But that's my take on Al Di Meola. As a guitarist, so influential. I think he took what John McLaughlin did and he pushed it down his own area. In terms of fast picking and technical guitaring, he sort of even advances, I think, on that area. He really pioneers really interesting things in terms of flamenco and Spanish music and integrating that. Same as Chick Corea has. He introduces Paco de Lucia to the world. These are really important things. You know, he's a phenomenal guitarist. I've found, listening to him as I have over the years, there's a little bit of an arrogance there, which is probably why I wanted to just take the mickey out of his image on some of those album covers. There's a little bit of arrogance there. He's not a humble player, and that's something that jars a little bit with me. You know, I find someone like John McLaughlin is far humbler, far more open as a player than Al Di Meola. Al Di Meola has a definite thing of what he's trying to do, and it's really going, look, this is me and I am fantastic, aren't I fantastic? You know, he can showboat a little bit, but at the time he was technically one of the most, well, at least one of the fastest guitarists of the world, one of the great guitarists of the world. So yeah, that's my take on Al Di Meola. I really felt he needed to be covered. I really felt that we couldn't look at this channel's looking at a lot of fusion, especially 70s jazz fusion, and he was an artist. All those albums, they were classics, and I absolutely love them. You know, I think, you know, if I was on a desert island with my box of 70s fusion albums, I'd have to have probably The Land of the Midnight Sun, maybe Elegant Gypsy. It would depend on my mood, but definitely one of those two. And then there's other 3. Absolutely fantastic. So that's my take on Al Di Meola and his 70s jazz fusion period. I hope you've enjoyed this little chat, and I hope you will like my page, and if you want to subscribe, and if you like this, please go and check out all my other videos, because there's so many there now. I've built up a little library of videos really trying to explore jazz fusion with a little bit of prog, a little bit of classic rock thrown in, but yeah, couldn't do jazz fusion without Al. We couldn't do it, could we? Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.